It's so easy to think that age is the biggest influence on distraction and cognitive decline, but it's not. Probably the number one thing that affects both distraction and your ability to focus and cognitive decline would be sleep quality. If you're not sleeping, you're going to be distracted at any age. And over time, you're going to have accumulated cognitive decline. So you really need to be getting good sleep. So that would be the number one thing. But then we can look at specific things that affect either focus and distraction or affect cognitive decline. You're going to be more focused in things you're interested and motivated around than things you don't care about. Also, if you're multitasking, you reduce your ability to focus. People who multitask a lot find it harder to get deep into a task. So multitasking, you need to avoid it whenever possible. So single task, single task, single task. In terms of cognitive decline, in addition to sleep quality, the other two big issues we need to think about are physical activity and diet. In terms of physical activity, if you're physically active at 60, you can have a sharper brain than you do if you're inactive at 40. And likewise, diet is key. People who have a Mediterranean diet have much sharper mental abilities than someone who has a traditional Western diet. So think about ways to incorporate olive oil into your life, maybe more fish, and green tea. Actually, green tea is a huge benefit to your brain. Think about exercise, think about getting better sleep, and think about single tasking. Actually, it's not. Coffee can aid focus, but what is it about coffee that improves focus? And it's the caffeine. So decaf coffee is not going to really help you focus, unfortunately, but caffeine can help you focus. It blocks a neurotransmitter called adenosine. Adenosine makes you drowsy. So because caffeine will block adenosine, it can give you a feeling of alertness. The downside, of course, to caffeine is that it can make you feel jittery. For some individuals, it can make you feel anxious. Plus, there's often a crash as soon as the caffeine wears off. Then the adenosine can rush into those receptors and suddenly you feel really tired, especially if you didn't sleep well the night before. So even better than coffee is tea. Tea contains, in addition to caffeine, regular tea contains something called L-theanine. And L-theanine combined with caffeine is actually going to give you better focus. And it gives you a calm focus. The L-theanine does things to the brain, particularly something called the default mode network, that is going to allow you to have calm focus, which is especially important for creative tasks or anything where you need to be focused all day, not just for that first hour of the morning. And the good news is that all kinds of tea contain L-theanine in different amounts. So maybe you prefer black tea, green or white tea, or oolong. All of those are going to contain some L-theanine. If you're someone who thinks, I can't stand tea, you can get L-theanine as a supplement. Aim for about 60 to 100 milligrams. But learn to be a tea drinker. It has so many different benefits, and it will give you the kind of calm focus that you need. And it also, the L-theanine prevents that crash afterwards. So coffee is good, tea is better. BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotropic factor. BDNF is like Miracle-Gro for your brain. In the same way that Miracle-Gro helps plants sprout in your garden, BDNF helps connections sprout in your brain. This is important for memory because if you have increased BDNF, you're going to be able to move things more easily from short-term memory to long-term memory. You'll be able to acquire skills faster, all because you're building more connections, and you can actually even grow new neurons in one region of your brain crucial for memory, and that's the hippocampus. You want more BDNF? How do I get more? Well, your brain produces it. And research shows one of the best ways to stimulate BDNF production is through exercise and moderate physical activity. And that's where you can talk, but you can't sing. So that might be running, cycling, an aerobics class. But basically, you want aerobic activity, and that's going to stimulate BDNF, which will help your memory. All of us should be concerned about memory loss because certain parts of the brain shrink as we age, and particularly we get shrinkage about 5% every decade after the age 40. We start losing brain matter in our hippocampus, which is crucial for memory. I'll give a couple of strategies. If you're young, start doing aerobic exercise because you can actually build up brain so you have more reserve when that decline starts. Now, what if you're older and you're thinking running won't work for me? What are my other options? A great strategy is to take a dance class. Research shows that 6 months of a dance class over the age of 60 can also help rebuild neurons in the hippocampus. And that's probably because dance gives you a social component, it gives you a physical component, and you also have to remember the steps. So it's a great trifecta. Dance classes are key. And start drinking green tea. It's an acquired taste, but there are so many chemicals in green tea that are beneficial, and many research studies indicate that older adults who drink green tea have much better memory function than those who don't. Incidentally, 3 cups seems to be the key. So you might need to build up your enjoyment of green tea, but if you can get up to 3 cups, that seems to be what's best for memory preservation. So what's a growth mindset and what's a fixed mindset? A fixed mindset is the belief that your abilities are set or that someone else's abilities are set. So if you're a manager, you might have a fixed mindset about one of the people who works for you on your team. A growth mindset is the belief that with effort, you can change, you can grow and learn how to do new things. And we need to have a growth mindset when it comes to feedback, whether you're a manager and you're giving the feedback or you're the employee receiving the feedback, because it really affects the experience. Managers who have a fixed mindset about their employees can tell that they feel they've been written off. Employees who have a fixed mindset about their own abilities won't try as hard. They're not as motivated, and it can also make it hard to receive feedback because you think, what's the point? I can't change. If you do have a fixed mindset, how do you move into a growth mindset? Research indicates that first learning that the brain can rewire itself and change with experience, that's crucial to developing a growth mindset. The other thing that you can do, and this is where social media can actually be a tool you can use, is what's called a saying is believing exercise. Try to convince someone else, and you can do this through posts on social media, that yes, we face this particular challenge. It's hard to grow in terms of feedback that I receive from my manager, but I'm working on it. And here are things you can do to be more open to feedback. And even if you don't believe it, by posting this, you'll increase the chances that you'll move towards a growth mindset. Sounds a bit counterintuitive. You've got to say something that you don't quite believe yet, but the idea is it will change your own mind. When we think about bias, we have to realize we're either leaning towards something or leaning away from something, and perhaps both. For instance, when it comes to soft drinks, perhaps you have a bias towards Coke over Pepsi. That's pretty harmless. But bias towards or away from people can be really problematic. And we normally think that when we have a bias or when someone else has a bias, it's because they have a negative belief about a group, and so they're leaning away from that group. But actually what the research indicates, especially at work, when we have a bias, we are not so much as leaning away from a group we don't like or have a negative belief around, but that we're showing what's known as in-group favoritism. We're really leaning towards the people who are like us, maybe someone who's the same age, someone who's the same race, the same gender. They went to the same school that you went to, right? So all of these would be areas where you could show in-group favoritism. And what neuroscientists are finding is that when we help someone who's part of our group, an area of the brain called the ventral striatum lights up. It's deep inside the brain, and it's associated with feeling rewarded. So when you help someone who looks like you or went to the same college that you did, you feel immediately rewarded. Whereas when you help someone who's not in your in-group, who's part of your out-group, those reward centers don't light up. You have to fight that bias to only help those people who are like you, and because it's going to feel like the right thing when, to be honest, treating everyone more equally would be the right thing. It's tricky to turn off bias because it's going to happen so automatically. That ventral striatum is kind of going to do a happy dance immediately. So you need conscious strategies to fight that bias to favor the in-group. First of all, identify who would be in your in-group versus who would be in your out-group. Do you tend to favor people who are going to be same race, same age? Maybe there's only one other person in your organization who's your age. And that's important for you to recognize that they'd be in your in-group and you're more likely to favor them. Develop a strategy so that you do treat everyone equally. So let's say you're a manager, there's a big deadline coming up, and you anticipate some people might ask for extensions. What you need to do is think carefully about what's your policy going to be for giving extensions so that you give them uniformly. You don't give an extension to Emily because Emily is the same race and gender that you are, and you don't even realize it, but Juan is a different race and gender. And so you'd be less likely to give him one. So what you need would be a strategy for, I'm going to give everyone an extension who blank, who met the last deadline or turned things in early. But you need some strategy so that it doesn't feel good to help the people who are like you. Placebo effects get a bad rap, but it's one of the most powerful things that your body does. So a placebo effect is when you expect a good outcome, therefore you get a good outcome. A nocebo effect is you have an expectation for a negative outcome, and as a result, you get a negative outcome. We often talk about placebo effects in terms of medicine. You take a particular medication and you feel better, or maybe you do acupuncture and you feel better. I'm a big fan of acupuncture, but there's increasing research to indicate that part of what's happening is that your body, your brain in particular, is anticipating a benefit, and so you get a benefit. That doesn't mean that it's not helpful. It just illustrates, wow, your brain is that powerful that it can improve how your body responds to things. It can reduce pain. There are placebo effects for things like irritable bowel syndrome, for kids with autism. So placebo effects are very powerful. Nocebo effects are also very powerful, and they happen when you anticipate that a drug will have a negative side effect. You're more likely to get those side effects. Whenever we get a prescription, there's this long list of all the complications. Probably better not to read all of those before you take the medication because it can actually increase the chance that you'll experience one of those. This is fascinating. Yes, gender can affect how our body responds to stress. So cortisol is a hormone that your adrenal glands produce in response to stress. And in short bursts and in short durations, cortisol is wonderful. It gives you more focus. It gives you the energy to get up and act. Cortisol is good in short amounts. It's problematic if it's elevated for long periods of time. It can create problems with inflammation. It interferes with sleep. It will reduce your memory. So long-term cortisol is bad. And I bring all of that up because men's bodies respond better to stress in that they have a huge spike in cortisol right when a stressful event happens, but then it resolves more quickly. The cortisol will go away faster for men than it does for women. Women have the less healthy cortisol response, unfortunately. They don't get that initial spike that's as high, but cortisol stays in their system longer. So they have that more damaging, elevated, prolonged response of cortisol in their bodies. So the takeaway from this should be that women need more stress reduction techniques because their bodies are just wired in ways that are less healthy in terms of responding to stress. And we see that in the workplace. We see that women have more burnout and feel more stressed than men do. We all face big stressors in life, and it could be something at work, like a big presentation. It could be something at home, like a parent who's having health problems, and that's becoming very stressful. So how can we prepare or respond? First of all, physical activity, exercise can help, and it can be often one of the things that goes away when we're very stressed. We feel we don't have time for exercise. Exercise helps your body cope with stress. It can help your body clear cortisol, so exercise is important. One that's really surprising, affectionate touch, especially right before a stressful event. So if you have, for instance, a presentation later in the day, that morning, to get some affection, and the research actually indicates a 20-second hug. It's a long hug, but a 20-second hug from a partner or someone in your family will reduce cortisol levels later. The stressful event won't be as hard on your body. Now, you might be thinking, I don't have someone to hug in the mornings. That's okay too. Actually, self-affection. So by that, I mean, for instance, just simply holding your shoulders like this and lightly rubbing for 20 seconds has the same reduction in cortisol, or perhaps putting your hand on your heart and just rubbing gently there for 20 seconds. So physical activity and affection, huge benefits. The other one is 10-minute mindfulness meditation can be incredibly helpful to reduce stress. So if you've always been meaning to get to meditation, reducing stress can be your reason to get there. The problem that I wanted to solve when I wrote this book is the problem of wellness overwhelm. We live in this wonderful time when there is so much advice out there on podcasts and Instagram and books about what we should be doing. You can find a 2-hour podcast just on improving your memory, and you might walk away not remembering all those strategies. It can become a part-time job just figuring out what you're going to do to improve your mental abilities, to improve your stress life at home. I wanted to make it simple and actionable. And that's what I did with this book. I did a lot of research to figure out what would be the very best strategies that are backed by research. And I wanted to make it motivating. So I provide the brain science, because if you're someone, for instance, who's always been intending to get a yoga practice or start drinking green tea, but you've never gotten there, I want to provide the brain science so you think, okay, this is worth it.